When you're muted, I don't know if you're talking on purpose.
All right, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Well, let me start over then.
Okay.
I just muted myself because David called. He's having audio problems.
Okay.
Video problems too, it looks like, but he said he could hear us, and he's going to text me if he has any other comments to make, or you can throw it in the chat, I guess, for you, Steph.
Okay.
Keep working on that. So we'll call the meeting to order and start with the approval of the agenda. If anybody has any late items they want to throw in there, or otherwise we'll get a motion to approve. Good.
Yeah.
Cameron and David. Okay, all in favor of approval of the agenda? Good. We do the elections before the minutes, Steph. Does that matter? Want to get the elections out of the way? Well, that's what's on there. So let's go straight to the elections. I didn't realize we were. Is it every year, Steph, that we do this, or is it every 2 years?
Yeah, it's every year. I think that works on paper, but it's odd for groups like you that only meet once or twice a year. So
yeah. So I think we have currently I'm the chair, David is the vice chair. And I think those are the only two positions that we are electing again. So the first thing is we'll call for nominations for the chair position. I'm certainly willing to stand again, but I'm also open to anybody else who would love to take that role. So I'll open the floor to nominations for the chair.
I'm happy to nominate you again, Glenn.
Thank you, Cooper. I will accept that. Looks like David's in favor of that. But I will call for any other nominations for the chair. And just one more time, I think I have to call 3 times for nominations for the chair. Okay, so currently I'm nominated to be the chair. All in favor of myself maintaining the role of chair for this? We're good to go. Okay. So election of the vice chair. David, I haven't talked to you about it, but since you're on mute, I'm happy to nominate you for the role of vice chair. But I will also call for any other nominations for the vice chair role. All right, calling one more time for nominations for the role of vice chair. And all in favor of David Bellringer maintaining his role as vice chair of this committee. Fantastic. So we'll do a you need a recommendation, or we need a move?
That was fine.
That's okay. We're good with that? Okay. Yep. So we'll move on to adoption of the minutes. So our last meeting was November 29th, 2023. The minutes were distributed along with the agenda. Do we have any adjustments to the minutes, comments, or questions? And if not, I'll call for a recommendation to adopt the minutes. Anybody want to adopt the minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, Cam, you get a second here.
Second.
David, you want to second that? Yeah. All right. All in favor of adoption of the minutes of November 29th, 2023. Good stuff. Any public comments, Steph? Anybody?
I have none.
Okay, let's move it along. So I guess we're up to Patrick.
Hi. So I haven't got a formal presentation. I'll just go over some of the key aspects of the system that we're dealing with. So the first, the phase 1 upgrades of the wastewater treatment plant have been operating for close to a year now, and it's everything's working as it should. The one issue that needed to be resolved was the noise issue. So there's been a silencer installed on the blower. I haven't seen any further complaints since that was installed. So I'm assuming that that's been addressed to people's satisfaction. The other major issue that we have to deal with is the outfall. Last summer, there was a number of incidents where the outfall was broke and had to be repaired. The last time there was some severe deformation and buckling and tangling of that line, and it had to be cut off about 2/3 of the way out to the outfall near Dorman Point. And so we're currently not compliant with the terms of our permit to discharge as a result of that. And that's a substantial cost to replace the outfall. It seems like the advice we're getting from the experts on this is that it's likely the root cause of the failures likely has to do with too much flow being pushed through too small a pipe, and we're getting entrained air in the pipe, and when that happens, you get some pipe buckling and the ballasts that are holding the pipe sliding and breaking, and some cases floating pipe, which we've seen. So really, we feel that the solution is to replace the outfall with a proper size pipe, which would be a 200 millimeter, as opposed to the current 75 millimeter diameter pipe. So Kristen's going to talk a little more about the financing options for moving that forward, but there is a legal imperative for us to do that. We did get an inspection from the province of our system, and there was a number of aspects that were not in compliance. One was the big one was the outfall itself, which I've just talked about. There was some reporting that we have to be tightening up. We'll be more diligent on that. There was also some results that were above the limits that we're allowed to have for discharge for BOD and TSS, total suspended solids. And so in discussing with the operators, it seems like those results were on periods of time when the operator wasn't paying daily attention to the facility, and so we have to arrange our own staff schedules to make sure that we have the coverage that's needed to prevent these types of results in the future.
But Patrick, quick question. That's a purely about operating the existing facility. That's not a capacity concern.
No, it's operating the existing facility, and
Okay.
So it's avoidable
Okay.
within our current complement of staff.
Are those incidents tied to weather events like they have been in the past with the capacity?
No, they weren't tied to weather events. They were we don't know for sure, but they seem to be tied to periods of time or days when the operator had days off and had things set up to run correctly, but maybe there was a need to remove some solids that should have been done on one day and ended up being done a day or two later, and then the time when the sample was taken sort of coincided with that gap in service.
sort of just purely for my ignorance, how much of the operation is manual versus just sort of always on system plant doing what it should?
Well, most of it is automated, but it does require daily attention.
Okay.
There are checks and steps that the operator has to take to make sure that things are working as they should.
So what we're talking about here is operational challenges. I'm just curious to know, Patrick, if you know, we've just passed another winter, and I know that a lot of our challenges with capacity to that system was tied to specific rain events in the past. And I'm wondering if we had any issues this past winter with overcapacity due to rain events at all, or if we've had any. I'm pretty sure after the phase one, there was and correct me if I'm wrong, was there a study done by Urban Systems to provide us an understanding of the impact of the phase one results? We haven't seen that. I'm just wondering if it's available to us.
Okay, yeah, well, we can make that available. Essentially, that was focused mostly on confirming whether the properties on Foxglove could be added to the system, and it was determined that we could, and that that was based on the conclusions from the urban system study about the effectiveness of the phase one upgrades. And we haven't had any issues with capacity. You know, I think we have had some major events, but essentially the equalization tank that was added as part of the phase one upgrades is functioning as intended and preventing system overflows.
Right. Okay.
I had a question. Patrick, when you refer to the operator, is that operator one of our staff, or is it contracted out and our staff provides backup?
It's one of our staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have we corrected those scheduling challenges with?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we have. So we wouldn't expect to see exceedances in future.
We should not see exceedances.
We should not, no.
Okay. I'm just also trying to understand, and maybe I'm taking us a little off course, but I just want to ask the question because the bigger conversation with the phase two upgrades being tied to future development and whatnot for the Cove. You know, we're tying the current overcapacity issues to weather events, and I think it's safe to say that weather events are going to continue to come at us and probably get worse. So how do we take that into account if we move forward with this phase two development? How do we take that into account, that we're not just going to be upgrading to a higher level of capacity in which Mother Nature is going to take that from us again? How are we able to safeguard ourselves against investing in this capacity issue when we don't have control over how the infiltration is affecting our system?
Well, we are continuing to inspect the system to the extent that we can and address known points of leakage into the system. There's a lot of parts of the system that we can't see, including and this is apparently something like 60% of inflow and infiltration in the region is from private parts of the system that are on private property, and so we likely have a similar situation here, and it's not an easy thing to eliminate. It's an impossible thing to eliminate. We can do our best to limit it and address infiltration where we can identify it, but we do have to assume that peak flows are going to be probably 2 times average flows, and the big reason for that is the inflow and infiltration, and that's something that all systems, all sanitary systems deal with. It's not really possible to avoid.
I just struggle again with tying the entirety of the upgrade and the costs of that upgrade to a local area and the future development of that local area, when really the challenges that we're facing are due to other infrastructure things, whether it's storm related systems or again just the changing weather patterns that are coming at us. So I mean, I just look at it from that perspective. I mean, you know, how can we expect future development to pay for this upgrade when we are not able to provide an assurance that we're not going to be in the same situation as soon as we complete that upgrade, you know? Anyways, that's just my comments, but we can keep the meeting moving forward. We can probably talk about this all day.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
we can complete upgrades that are adequate for the growth that's expected and account for inflow and infiltration as well. I mean, that's part of the design process. And you know, inflow and infiltration is not, you know, the only source of increases to flow to the system. I mean, growth is another big part of it, and that's a standard, you know, approach to designing sanitary sewer systems is making reasonable assumptions for inflow and infiltration. That,
but what is reasonable when we face these changing weather patterns, you know? And as I say, I mean, prior to this moratorium happening, we were always led to believe, this committee was led to believe for many years, this council was led to believe for many years, that we had capacity for future growth, quite a bit of it actually. And it's only when the big atmospheric rivers happened that all of a sudden we're in this situation, it seemed to me. So I'm just saying, like, we're going to be expecting more of this. Are we planning for that for part of this project?
Well, we would have to. We'd have to plan for that.
Yeah. And would that cost be borne by future development if that's not the problem?
I don't know.
Yeah. That's a bit rhetorical. Sorry. Okay. Any other comments or yeah, Cooper?
Can I have an idea or a suggestion here? If 60% of the infiltration is likely occurring on private property, and we are about to SWAC private property owners with some increased costs for the system here, can we provide some kind of incentive for private property owners to have their own systems checked in exchange for some kind of rebate or credit with the new fees that are going to get put in place here? It's a unique time when we actually have a reason for people to check their own systems.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I'm not sure exactly how that would work, but people do respond to financial incentives.
I don't know how exactly it would be implemented either, but if 60% of the problem is there's no incentive for people to check their own systems, we're about to charge them a whole lot more for the system. It's a great incentive to get them to take a look.
Yeah.
When you say that it's connected to private systems, what does that mean? Does that mean people have their gutters connected to the sewer system? Like what are we talking about when it comes to that?
Or there's you know, a broken pipe that ties into the sewer mains coming off of private property, something like that.
Right. Okay. Councillor Wake, did you have a question?
Well, I'm kind of wondering the same thing. I mean, we have gutters in our house. It goes down to drainage, below surface. I assume that ultimately connected to the ditch system and to the various pipes that we see on Kate's Hill, sort of water flowing out of them during a rain event, and it's not going into the sewer. And I thought that the leakage into the sewer was more from rainwater and manhole encatchment. So I'm not sure I understand what Cooper's referring to, where you got that number of whatever you said, 60% or 40%.
60%. This was Dewey, the wastewater operator, did a course recently looking at inflow and infiltration, and that was a regional statistic that was presented at the course, that in general, looking across the region, that they've discovered that a high percentage of inflow and infiltration comes from private properties. We don't know specifically what the situation is on Bowen. That's just a regional statistic.
Well, given how important that is to this discussion, it seems to me it'd be worth investigating where our stormwater is coming from, and if in fact private systems are contributing stormwater into the sewer system, because basically those are always usually kept separate. So I don't understand how a lot of the private stormwater drainage is ending up in the system.
Well, it may not be, and the only real way to determine that is to do some dye testing on each individual property and confirm, water from here is going there, and so that's obviously that's a lot of effort, but that's something that that we could look into doing. And then this idea of incentives is also another another good thought, and perhaps there's some regulation that could be brought to bear on this issue as well.
Cam?
Yep, Patrick, what is the range of cost to do dye testing or whatever the appropriate testing is per household? Have you got a general range? Is it a couple $100? Was it a couple $1,000?
Yeah, it's probably less than 1,000 to
Right.
do that. So it's not so the external costs aren't necessarily huge. It's just the magnitude, the number of properties, and the staff time involved in pursuing
Right.
that.
Are we still actively looking at the I&I challenges we have? Is it something that's ongoing? I mean, to a certain degree. I mean, I know it all costs money, but this is a pretty big. Like we have determined, it seems, that I&I is the reason we have these overcapacity issues, which are tied to rain events. So I just think that before we try and figure out how to gather all this money to fix that, are we making progress? Is there improvements being made? Are we gaining capacity as we go with initiatives?
Yeah, there have been improvements, and we are continuing to investigate and address infiltration issues. We did sort of a major push a little over a year ago, well, more than a year and a half ago, and that we did see some measurable effect from that. It's difficult to tell with sort of the more minor fixes that are being done here and there, whether capacity is being gained. It's not necessarily obvious.
I have one question, and this is really jumping ahead, so maybe we can it's better to have Kristen present her portion. But like in the budget that we have here, does that include upgrades for capacity, or does it just includes the new outflow pipe, right? There's no anticipation, like there's no increase in reserves for this 7 million plus, new plant at some point in the future, right?
No, this is about financing the outfall and trying to build reserves, which really at this point are needed to keep up with maintenance of existing, not to fund
Right.
new
So, I
construction.
mean, so Glenn, from that perspective, right now, the budget doesn't include anything on capacity expansion.
No.
Well, is there any way we can go back to when Kate's Hill was developed, and there must be some drawings of how stormwater was handled, or something to indicate that stormwater was not being sent directly into the sewer system. I mean, you wouldn't want it to be, because that automatically is going to overload your system volume wise. So how do we? I mean, I'm just shocked that until now I understood stormwater was the issue. I did not understand that it was originating on private properties. I thought it was part of the road system. So is there any way we can answer that question other than doing dye testing on individual properties?
I don't know how else. I mean, drawings we have wouldn't reflect, because you wouldn't see that on a drawing. It's not supposed to be the case. And it may be that we don't have a lot of this cross connection, and maybe we have compromised sewer connection pipes that are coming on from private property into the main system. And it's possible that there's cross connections that, it wouldn't be reflected on a drawing. It would be somebody making a mistake, or somebody, connecting a pipe where it shouldn't be connected. So that is possible. That does happen.
Just for the sake of transparency, Patrick, I would request that this committee has provided any additional data that's been collected in regards to the measuring of results from any I&I things that we've tried to fix. I'd also like to see the urban systems report, if possible, in regards to what allowed Foxglove to connect as well, to see, just so that we can see what we might be gaining in the way of capacity through the efforts that have gone in to date. I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't had any overcapacity issues related to big weather events since 2021, I think, when we put the moratorium on. Yeah. So I mean, it says that we might be headed in the right direction. Maybe we are solving some of the bigger problems, because we still have had big rain events. Maybe nothing like the atmospheric river at that time, but perhaps it's time to take a look and see. As I say, there's no question that our sewer infrastructure needs attention, needs upgrading. We need to account for future growth, and future growth needs to pay for that. But the question on everybody's mind is, do we really need to go through a 7-year, 8-year moratorium on building permits in order to get to the finish line? Is there capacity that we could be considering for the Cove? And does the data point to any of that? So I would love to be able to see it. We haven't. This committee hasn't been shown any of that information at this point. I don't know if
Okay,
it's
I
a
mean,
request for you, or if we should make a recommendation to council to have that information provided to us. I don't know.
no, I mean, we can, I'm just struggling a little bit with what information to provide. I mean, we have outflow monitoring from the plant. And it's, and we can provide that. That's on our SCADA system. It doesn't, you know, without looking at doing some more detailed analysis about the time periods that we're seeing and the weather events that happen and how they compare to, you know, weather events from past years, it's not really that meaningful. So it's it's not simply a matter of just providing data. There would have to be some analysis looking at trends, cross-referencing with weather patterns, and trying to come up with some conclusions. So it's a bit of
Yeah,
a
I get it. I guess
consulting
that's my
exercise.
hope, is that we are doing some analysis of whatever data we have. I mean, I do understand that there was, after the phase one work was completed, that there was a study done by Urban Systems to determine the impact of that work. Is that the case? Is there something in that
Yeah,
regard?
there is. I was under the impression that had been shared, and if it hasn't, then we'll make sure that it is.
Okay. Okay. And do we keep track of any of the work done on the INI? I mean, if the guys come across a manhole that seems to be, you know, allowing a lot of stormwater in, and they make a correction, is there a report done on that as far as what the potential gains might have been, or at least what they even just a best guess to determine how much we are impacting the INI with the work we're doing? Do they track that at all?
Yeah, it's not really something that's very easy to estimate. And I mean, we do know when improvements are made. Quantifying it though is a little bit it's a lot trickier.
Well, is there a level of comfort that you would be able to look at to say, okay, you know, we had these issues in 2021 with weather events. X amount of years have passed. We continue to have weather events, but we're not seeing the same kind of capacity results. Is there a threshold in which yourself as an engineer would be comfortable enough to say, perhaps we have some capacity to give?
Well, and that was the question to Urban Systems, was, you know, to give us a sense of, well, we've done this I&I work, we've done this wastewater treatment plant upgrade. What sort of capacity do we have to add these Foxglove properties and potentially others? And that's, you know, and that's what their analysis was based on determining. And it really concluded that yes, we could add these Foxglove properties, but not others, but nothing beyond that. That was the general conclusion.
Do we have a means of accurately measuring the inflows over a time frame to the treatment plant? And where I'm going with this is, if we have that data ongoing, then could we not wait for the next big rain event and compare to see if we saw an increase over that, you know, 24 or 48-hour period?
Yeah, we could look at analysis of particular rain events. You know, we have inflow monitoring now from the gravity zone coming off Cates Hill. We have the records from the pump stations. Those would have to be all brought together, and then we have the outflow monitoring. So there is some analysis that could be done, and you'd have to look at you know, what's occurring on a certain rainfall event, and then you would want to look at another event further into the future. you know, there's effort and cost involved every time you want to do that type of analysis. But yeah, that's something that, you know, we would have the capacity to do. I think we would want to get some support, probably from Urban Systems on that. And that's, you know, that the report that they did look at some of that type of information.
And Urban Systems is the only firm that we have providing direction to us on this project. Is that correct?
We've also been getting direction from Great Pacific, and they're sort of more specialists on marine outfalls. And so they've been they did the environmental impact study and the pre-design for the outfall, and so we've been consulting with them as well on the outfall issue.
But they haven't taken a look at the bigger picture with the capacity at all, or the INI.
No.
No.
It just seems to me it shouldn't be that hard to monitor continually, then pick a specific time frame when you've had a significant rain event and see if there's what the percentage increase is in what would normally be the steady state flow. Because, you know, during a storm event, it's not like we're generating any more in the sewer system. So we don't seem to have a sense of how much, if any, the stormwater is getting in.
Well, we do have a sense of that, and that's, you know, that's based on looking at outflows from the system over a long time period, and that's the analysis that Urban Systems has done for us, and the pre-design that they've done for the wastewater upgrades have come up with, you know, reasonable factors to apply on estimating peak flows that, you know, would typically coincide with extreme weather events. So you know, whether some of that analysis has been done. It's not like we don't have any idea. We have a you know, we know that the wet weather flows are and peaks are typically double what the average flows are, and a lot of that is relating to inflow and infiltration.
I guess that's the
we also know
frustration.
that's also typical of other systems in the region. It's very, I mean, some are worse, and maybe there's some that are slightly better, but it's that's what you see. That's what you see for this type of sanitary collection system.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, it seems to be the degree to which we have been had the infiltrate. Like, you know, you look at Bowen Island, which is a highly seasonal community, and in the peak of summer, when we have the highest number of people on this island using our infrastructure, we're nowhere near the capacity challenges. It's random times in the dead of winter when the island's probably got the smallest number of people on it that we see these rain events that spike. So to suggest that we need to completely freeze our economy and stop development when this is going to happen no matter what, even if building permits were not restricted in any way, we would still have the exact same situation. So that's the frustration that I hear anyways. You know, if we were seeing these spikes in the summertime when the tourists were flooding the island and every house was full, and, you know, that's one thing, but we're nowhere near our capacity in the highest point in the summertime. It's in these random occurrences in the wintertime that have us completely frozen in our tracks now. So it's trying to understand the rationale behind this kind of imposition of a long-term moratorium without any understanding of how we're going to achieve the goal, we're just crippling a community that would be in the same situation even if we didn't have the moratorium. That's
Well,
but yeah.
it's not really the, I mean, the weather events, the inflow and infiltration is one source, but adding to the system also adds flow. I mean, that's why we, you know, when we get professionals to give us some indication on what the capacity is, what the available capacity is, that, you know, they can't say there's capacity when there isn't. And whether that's you know, that whether the governing factor is in the wintertime or the summertime doesn't, you know, that doesn't really it's not really true to say we adding to the system wouldn't have any effect on the situation we're in. It would have an effect. It would add flow to the system. I'm not sure I would agree with that.
Okay. To someone who's been given who has a Foxglove Lane property that hasn't been built out, and they do not have any intention of building that property out for a period of time, could they give that connection to someone up on Rivendell if they wanted to?
I'm not sure how that would work. That seems to be getting pretty messy. I think the part of the rationale for providing the ability for the Foxglove properties to connect is because those properties are of such a size that they really have no opportunity for septic systems. And so essentially not allowing them to connect is a moratorium on any development of those properties, whereas most of the other properties that haven't been developed in the system are much larger and, you know, would have the opportunity to provide a septic solution.
Do we have an actual number of permits that are held back because of the moratorium, or people who would build if there weren't a moratorium? Like, do we have specifics on sort of economic stagnation caused by this? I don't know.
Well, we know we have numbers of lots that could be built on. Like, we don't have permit applications for those lots or really an understanding of.
So how many lots are currently affected by this?
There's like five residential lots. There's the lot beside the pub. There's probably about 10 lots. If I'm guessing, I don't know for sure.
Okay.
Well, you also, sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you also can't redevelop. I mean, anywhere up and down Snug Cove, that Snug Cove properties for sale. You can't redevelop there. Glenn's commercial property, right, piece of land right beside his pub. There's the parking lot in off of Village Square. You can't add another toilet anywhere in Snug Cove, so it's more than just the residential side.
Yeah.
But a lot of people probably on the sidelines because of that, having not put an application in, so hard to gauge how much activity is being sidelined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Patrick, do I remember maybe hearing from you in the past that heavy weather events, heavy rain events wind up sort of showing up? There's a lag, and that sort of shows up in the sewer like a couple of days later, as opposed to instantaneously when the rain is kind of falling out of the sky. Am I correct about that?
Well, I mean, it shows up fairly quickly, but I guess what you might be referring to is that the issues that we have aren't with the shorter and, high intensity rainfall. It's when you have multi-day
I see.
rain events that.
Where I was going with that was I'm thinking of this scenario that we've talked about a little bit, a Cates Hill house that might inadvertently have run their roof drains into the sewer system. That strikes me as something that would show up instantaneously every time it rains. There would be no lag. That would be like flushing a toilet. And with a goal of maybe getting a better sense of, you say regionally 60% of infiltration comes off of private property. Now, admittedly, not all of it is just roof drains being plumbed incorrectly into the sewer. But certainly part of it would be that. And probably there are houses on Cates Hill that has happened to, just as you point out, like by mistake. But it seems to me that would spike every single time it rains, however much of a spike it is, like a 1 hour downpour ought to show up in the sewer system as it's happening.
Yeah, you would expect a quick response.
And you don't necessarily see that?
No, I mean, we do see a response. I'm not sure we're able to, I'm not sure how we would separate that from, other infiltration, which doesn't necessarily have much of a lag either, right? If you've got rainfall occurring, leakage occurring into the manholes, that starts to happen, as soon as the ground gets wet. And so I'm not sure how granular we'd be able to get. We could invest in some study but there would be an expense to that, and
sure,
we would see.
My question was sort of around, I think it was Cooper's idea of maybe we can encourage homeowners to have some work done on their properties to identify this. And, you say 60% region wide, maybe it's 50 or 40 on Bowen, maybe it's 70. But if we could encourage homeowners within the catchment area to do that, like every liter that gets identified and saved is capacity available on the other end. Like the value of that just seems to be extraordinary to me. No building of infrastructure, no nothing, just divert the water somewhere else. And
it's a lot less than 7 million either way.
Probably. That seems like a winning idea to me. I applaud that.
So I've just got to ask here: are we not debating back and forth which is the more important challenge for us? Wanting to have capacity to expand, or wanting to make sure we don't have too much stormwater in there? Either way, we're at our limit, and either way, whether it's stormwater or development or a combination, we can't move forward until we get a fix. And that fix, as I understand it, is tied to development, but we can't even contemplate the development until we get the fix. So we need the $7 million upgrade to solve this problem. And I don't think tinkering at the edges of how much of it is stormwater is really going to inform us. Like, it's going to buy us a little more capacity, but only for a little while.
And then there's a equity challenge on that marginal capacity and who gets it, because it probably doesn't cover anyone anyway.
So this discussion always seems to come back to the same thing. It's like what can we do? Well, there's nothing we can do. But I think we're basically, in our last OCP, we actually said, okay, we're going to focus all the density increase into Snug Cove, and now we basically can't do that, which basically says we can't grow unless we grow somewhere else, on either the Seymour Bay sewer system, or as everybody's doing in the Cove, going on to septic fields, and that's just not a long-term solution. So
I think that's I think you hit it right on the head there, councillors. It seems to me it's a circular hot potato that nobody wants to really address. You know, that $7 million number was last year's number, and we won't have a solution or an idea of where we're going to get that money until it's probably more like 12 million. And you know, the challenging thing is, you know, it's frustrating. We look at 5-year financial plans. We're going to talk to Kristen about that. We look at you know, council's 5-year plan. This is not even a footnote on any of it, and it's scary. You know, it really is. I don't know that we really are putting enough thought into how we're going to fix this problem, because it's easy to say, you know, maybe we could take a break with development for a while and not have to deal with this, but this is such a big project, such a long-term project, that we could be really, there's some serious implications to our community as a whole if we don't move this forward somehow and figure out where that money's going to come from and do that. So
I have a question on just sources of funding here. Like, how finding 7 million or 12 million or whatever the number ends up being is hard no matter what. And then there's other systems around Bowen that have similar issues in terms of water treatment or whatnot. But it seems to me that the one of the core challenges here is that everything is divided into multiple sort of jurisdictions on Bowen, and if the OCP, the current one and whatever future one, is going to push development to the Cove, which it probably is, because that makes a lot of sense. But the funding mechanisms for anything in the Cove are either developers or residents of the Cove, and they can't attach to anything else funding sources on the island. Like, there's always going to be a scale mismatch here, because the project you're going to want to do in the Cove is going to be the biggest, most expensive project, but it's limited from sources of funding. Is that a true statement, or am I oversimplifying that? I don't know if that's a question for Kristen or Patrick.
Certainly funding the utilities is traditionally always done by the people who directly benefit from the utilities. That's a long time tested model. And that's not to say that's the way we've always funded sewer items on Bowen Island, because we certainly haven't. The sewer is the one system that has benefited from island-wide funding over the years, to the tune of probably about $3 million. So it's a difficult question for councils to consider how to find it, and the answer, I think, needs to be more lobbying at the federal and provincial government level for grant funding for small communities like ours to try and get that money. What we don't get is the federal gas tax money. Being part of Metro Vancouver, our allotment of gas tax money, for the most part, goes to regional wide projects, transportation projects. Other communities, similar communities of our size throughout the province, do have access to gas tax money that can be saved and put towards infrastructure projects. So,
and we don't, because we're part of Metro Vancouver, but not part of Metro Vancouver.
We are part of Metro Vancouver, 100%. And
yeah,
Gas tax
but we're
money
just a
is,
tiny bit of it, so we don't get.
gas tax money is pooled and goes to fund TransLink and road initiatives in Metro Vancouver. You look at Gibson's, you look at other similar communities of our size outside of Metro Vancouver, they have annual grants from the gas tax funding that is very significant and funds to a large degree a lot of their infrastructure projects that we just don't have access to.
So I'm just wondering if, like, for a small municipality that has so many different sort of separately managed utility jurisdictions and sitting as a small piece of Metro Vancouver, like, it's the worst of both worlds on both sides of that equation.
Yes.
My guess is we have less ability to deal with the Metro Vancouver side of it. Maybe that, that's a political question, I guess. But like, can we clean our own house up at all and simplify the 8 or 15, I don't know how you count it, sort of utility jurisdictions on the island, so we can have these discussions broadly as a community, and the Cove's going to have to support Tunstall, and Tunstall's going to have to support Eagle Cliff or whatever. But like, we've sort of divided and conquered ourselves on all of this infrastructure stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I think that until we solve that problem, we're, I don't see how to get around this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with you on that, Cooper. I want to just keep the meeting moving along, and since we've got Kristen talking money and whatnot, we probably just stay on that vein and move into the 5-year financial plan, unless anybody has any more comments for Patrick or questions at all.
Just one final comment. I think FCM to me is the organization that takes federal money and funds out to much needed projects in large and small communities. And I attended the FCM conference last summer and talked to the Green Building Fund, and they fund all kinds of sewage treatment upgrades in communities. But the roadblock we seem to be up against is that that funding is based on requirements that don't involve new development. If new development is involved, then that new development has to pay for it. And that's the catch-22 that seems to, so I think we're an exception, and I think I don't even know how to begin to do this, but I think we should be appealing to basically the federal government through FCM, because at the end of the day, $7 million is huge for us, but it's not huge in terms of the kinds of budgets that they're handling. So,
Tim, what is that acronym FCM?
Oh, Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Okay.
So it's like the UBCM for Canada. And the UBCM is the Union of BC Municipalities, so that's our provincial organization, and it's basically helping municipalities manage, and it's the link. So FCM is where a lot of the money that we get granted flows through FCM. I mean, Patrick and Kristen, have I got that right?
Yeah.
So I don't have answers. I just think that's where we need to be pushing, and maybe we need to have a strategy session on how we do that. I've talked to Liam about it numerous times, and he's got a very strong background in this from his role at the province, and he kind of can't figure out how we're going to do it, and we just get stuck there.
So Kristen, do we want to jump into your 5-year financial plan?
Sure. I'm gonna take a minute just to bring the spreadsheet up on screen. It's easier to kind of talk about that way.
Can I jump in then? Patrick, I've got a question for you for the minutes. An acronym you said earlier on. Is it OBDs or something? That were happening with the outfall? Slightly higher than they should be.
Oh, BOD,
BOD and,
TSS.
thank you. I'll just look those up. There you go.
Thanks. Am I sharing my screen with you now? Do you see it?
But it's not, we can see the slides on the side.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
So here we go. I'm going to start with the expenses. I also want to talk a little bit about 2023 actuals versus the 5-year planned operating expenses going forward. So this column here it's unaudited, but it is year-end final financial numbers. This column here is our budget. This is the variance between the two. And then the green columns over here, starting here is 2024 planned expenditures, 2025 through 2028. So for our operations budget, those are these expenditures here in this section. Whoops, sorry, go back. These expenditures here in this section. This budget in 2023 was about $275,000. For 2024, we're putting it up to about 318. Now, some of those things, of course, include general increases to staff salaries and wages. We do have our sewer, our utilities crew, our unionized staff. We do not have an agreement in force at the moment. It expired December 31st, 2022. So they worked without a contract last year. We still are waiting to meet to settle the agreement. So there will be retroactive 2023 expenditures from the 2023 collective agreement, which will show up in 2024. We are using a 4% for the most part inflationary factor for most of our expenses. Some of the other ones we know are potentially could be higher. Fuel costs are always very volatile, that sort of thing. So I have sort of increased here for 4% year over year, but one thing that is and has shown up this year, which you'll see here on this contract services line, was very much over budget last year, and I have increased the budget this year to be in line with what we spent last year, and that is the cost to pump out the plant. So with the added capacity, I suppose this is one of the areas where we're showing new expenditures now. And that there's a truck that comes over and pumps out that plant and takes it off island. So I have increased that budget significantly higher than 4%. And additionally, in 2023, what we did see, and it's over here, is the increase to repairs and maintenance. So much of that resulted from the repairs that were required to be done on the outfall over the summer. One piece of good news, the outfall part of that repair again was covered by insurance. There was a payment of $23,400, I think, that went somewhat to offset some of the costs. Overall, we did spend about $40,000 for the we had a couple of situations with divers going down, assessing and doing repairs over the summer. So that was good news that some of it at least is covered by insurance, but certainly not all of it. So we will probably just, again, as the system ages, we are going to see costs increase for the repairs and maintenance side. I want to just talk about the revenue quickly for 2023 versus budget. We did have to, over the course of the year, increase user rates more than what we had planned in budget. That was, of course, to deal with the urgent and critical issue of the outfall. And also to, once that event happened in the summer and it became evident to us that we needed to undertake a full replacement of the outfall, what we needed to make sure that we had at the end of the year was sufficient reserves in order to get started on that design process. So at the beginning of the year, the reserves in the sewer fund was $460,000. 100% of that was all earmarked to complete the upgrade project. So the sewer actually started the year with 0 in reserves. All of that money was earmarked for the upgrade. So at the end of the year, where we were left sitting was $150,000. So some of that money came from here, was another transfer from the general fund of $100,000. I did suspect that the sewer fund would need to be have a little bit of support from the general fund to get through the year. And what we did end up then was having that money in reserve at the end of the year. Now, all of that money is available to fund the upcoming design fees for the outfall project. So I'm gonna go back to the revenue side here. So we talked a little bit at our last meeting about how we're gonna fund this outfall project, and doing the work and looking at how we can fund it without adding a whole brand new parcel tax or really making this unaffordable for people. I believe that what we can do is get started on the outfall project. We can borrow the money needed to replace it, but we can delay the repayment a little bit until such time as the internal loan is repaid between the sewer fund and the general fund. So I'll take you to a slide here. This just kind of explains where we're at with the internal borrowing between the general fund and the sewer fund. So going back to 2022, we had a project that we estimated was just over 1.6 million to undertake the upgrade. And that was funded through $1 million in capital renewal and replacement funds and $640,000 in general surplus funds. In total, we also added $100,000 from the general surplus funds last year. So the total funding provided by the general fund towards this sewer upgrade project was $1.74 million. Now, there was an allocation determination by the last council, which directed that 43.8% of that project cost be attributed directly to the sewer district, and the remaining 56.2% would be absorbed by the general fund. So the repayment schedule for that loan was determined to be over 7 years, and we repaid $102,000 in each of 2022 and 2023, which means there's now at the end of 2023 a balance left owing to the general fund of $556,000. So that will be repaid within the life of this 5-year financial plan. It will be repaid at $111,000 per year from 2024 to 2028. So going back to the expenses, capital revenue expenses, going over here, you can see this repayment from the sewer fund to the general fund each year at $111,000 in 2024, 25, 26, 27, and 28. Once that is repaid, that frees up that budget room, and that room can then be used in order to service the debt that's required. It can almost, it's almost enough to service the debt that is going to be required to repay this outfall project. So I believe we can get started on this outfall project without a significant increase to the parcel tax. What I believe that we need is a one-time increase to the parcel tax right now in 2024 of 25%. So I believe it's at 713 right now. And I believe if we increase that to I believe the number is 889. I'm sorry, I thought I had it handy. I believe it's 889. If we increase the parcel tax from 713 currently to 889, and we do a one-time increase of the user rates from 347 per year to 400,000 per year, that will provide an adequate revenue in order to adequately repay the long-term debt, and that's a 30-year debt, and as well as to continue to fund and replenish the sewer reserve fund in order to have the money needed to maintain and invest and do, you know, pipe replacements and lift station repairs and all of those things that that we just don't have the money for right now. So it's a 5-year plan. It's not a 30-year plan, but it is, I believe, a way that we can get the main infrastructure outfall replacement project funded and get it into the regular annual budget and still make an annual reserve fund contribution in order to ensure that we don't get back to that situation where the reserve fund is either negative or zero. But here you can see we the end of 2024 under this financing plan, we expect to have about $200,000 and not draw it down less than $100,000 any year going forward. So a one-time increase to the rates and then an annual increase of 5% after that will provide us with the necessary funding to fund the outfall and make that annual contribution to reserves. So I am just going to stop for a moment.
Can I ask an ignorant question?
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to. If I'm a resident living in the local area catchment for the sewer system,
Yeah.
But I have a septic field,
Mhm.
I know I wouldn't pay my user rates, but do you still pay the parcel tax?
The parcel tax applies to properties that are either connected or have paid the fee and are approved to be connected. So if they are a septic property not connected to the sewer, they won't be subject to this, because at this point, if something changes, we would change the applicability of the parcel tax. But at this point, given that we don't have capacity and we can't connect that property, it doesn't sit right that we would charge them for a service that we cannot provide. So an unconnected parcel is not subject to it.
Kristen, do you have numbers on that revenue side from back in 2023? Because it seems to me we had a big percentage increase in parcel tax and user fees in 2023. And now we're contemplating a big one again. So it's like 2 in a row. Do I have that right? Or
yes, we did increase it last year and we increased it again. We're planning to increase it again this year.
Okay, because residents are already, I'm hearing about it, they're already feeling last year's increase. So this is
yeah, I do. This last year's increase was not in the parcel tax, but in the rates was over the course of the year was a one-time adjustment in last year, which was done as a means to ensure that, because our operating expenses in 2023 went way over with the outfall replacement, with the fact that we were $30,000 under budget for the pump out truck. We started operating through the year. I kind of saw mid-year that we're going to be way over on the operating side if we don't increase the amount of revenue in this fiscal year. So we increased it in 2023 more than we had anticipated. The 2024 budget is coming back down again. It's still higher than 2023, but it won't be as high as 2020. Sorry, the 2024 budget won't be as high as the 2023 budget. I'll just bring that slide up for you again so you can see it, or if you have your agenda, you can see the one-time impact to the revenue side. Share screen. There. So on the revenue side, and you can see the actual user rate revenue for 2023 at $452, $100,000 higher than the budget revenue of $347. But the 2024 revenue is budgeted at 400,000. So that's quite a bit lower. So for the average person, yes, the budget rate is going up, but I expect them to be paying less than they paid last year.
And
So-
further to that question, sorry, Councillor, just for people's own reference, the 5% increases year over year moving forward, is that something people should feel confident in, or are those just placeholders until we determine how much more next year?
No, it's actually an approach that I'm taking across every utility system. So it's something that I have a high degree of confidence in. That's what we've been doing in a couple of the West Side systems, and it seems to be working. It seems to be leaving them in a position with increased reserves year over year for the last 3 years. So it looks to me like that's something we could sustain.
Councillor Wake, I think I cut you off. Did you have something you wanted to add there?
Well, I'm still a little unclear if the change in user rates is going up 15%.
Yeah, from budget. So the budget was 347, 15% increase to the budget is 400.
Okay. But the actual payments that we made, like, so
the sewer bylaw requires that all of the expenses be covered by the users of the system.
right.
So we set a rate. It's a target rate. It's what we expect, and it's not happened that we have been so over on our operating budget before that we end up, well, I guess it happened one year a few years ago where the sewer ended up in a deficit position. The sewer has to, it can't end up in it. You can't have a utility system that has negative reserves. You just can't. So if halfway through the year, we see that, geez, our target revenue is not going to cover the operating expenses in a given year, then we'll have to increase the revenue over the course of the year in order to make sure that the sewer doesn't, or any of the utilities don't operate in a deficit. This is the one utility that has so little reserves that that it can't absorb an operating loss in a year because it's already at 0. So that was a one-time impact to user rates in 2023 that we don't expect to occur again. We believe that we've increased the budget enough, and we also believe that some of those expenses were extraordinary one-time expenses. The repair to the outfall, we've now obviously severed the part of the outfall that's the most damaged, and we're looking at replacing that outfall with a full replacement. We don't expect to continue to have these ongoing annual repairs to that piece of infrastructure, and we've increased the budget, we believe, adequately to deal with the added cost of having the pump out truck coming over more than it had in the past. So we believe the budget at this level is sustainable to meet the needs of the operating budget, add to the reserves, and once the internal debt to the general fund is over, then it can finance the long-term external debt to replace the outfall pipe.
Okay, so I'm still wondering if you have a figure on how much the actual user rates increased in 2023 over 2022.
I don't have it with the material with me right now, but I can review it, and I can send an email to the committee and to you as well, Tim.
Okay, I just think we need a communication piece here to let users know that yes, you know, we had a substantial increase in 2023.
Yeah,
and we know you're concerned, and
yeah,
basically they need to hear about this background that we've heard as to because there isn't one simple answer to this. It's multiple reasons. Part of it is the transfer from the general fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the perfect opportunity for that is when we do the notice of intent for the new borrowing. We could put together a communication piece to accompany that, and that would provide some additional background and some additional context for when I say that rates are increasing, a one-time increase, then sort of speak to the one-time increase that was experienced in 2023 as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. So on the slide here, we see a 15% increase in user rates, and then in the agenda pack, the second or the third bullet point for utility rate recommendation talks about a 25% user increase through a flat rate fee. How are these different or the same?
The 25 is the change to the parcel tax. So that's the flat rate that goes on your taxes. That's same tax for all properties. And then
Right,
you
but I just like the third bullet point down talks about 25% again when we're talking about the utility rate, like the user rate. Is that just a typo comparison to the slide, or
no, I just need to, I'm sorry, I'm not sure where you're pointing at. So
it's the utility rate recommendation section of the Snug Cove sewer system budget update in
yeah.
our agenda pack, and
Yeah.
then it's the third bullet point there.
Can we share
this is just something about how the user rates are structured. It's another piece of the conversation which we haven't had before, but it's probably something we should have.
Well, I that's why I'm asking, because I know in our November meeting we talked about how we were thinking about this from residential users to commercial users, and I know that doesn't say that specifically in that bullet point, but I think that's the relevant bullet point.
They're two separate things. So one is the parcel tax. How is that going to be structured? And is it going to be one tax per property? Is it going to be something more like the Cove Bay water one is structured, where business parcels or parcels with more than 4 units on it pay a different parcel tax? So this is not about that. This is about how we structure collection of user rates. So it's got nothing to do with parcel tax. The parcel tax we are proposing is just an increase to the existing flat rate parcel tax from 713. I think the number is 889, but so this is not anything to do with a parcel tax distribution. It's about how we collect user rates. So right now, when you see your utility bill, you'll see the Cove Bay piece has a flat rate component of 280, and that has metered rates on top of that. On the sewer portion of your utility bill, it's straight consumption. There's no flat rate piece. What I think we need to consider is a property who closes up. They go on holiday for 3 months and they have absolutely no consumption for that 3 months, pays 0 into the sewer for that 3-month period while they're away. Is that fair? Should there be a flat rate component to the sewer in addition to collecting just through consumption rates? I think there should be. I think that there's a huge fixed cost benefit of just having a sewer treatment plant on standby to every property owner in the Cove. And just because the water consumption was 0 for a 2-month or 3-month period, I think that there's still some requirement for that property owner to pay something towards the operation costs of that sewer. So that's what this point is about. And I wanted to just float that idea by committee members and see what their opinion was.
Say that other water systems on the island do something similar now?
I would say every water system on the island has a flat rate component and a variable rate component. Yes.
Except the Cove, which only has a variable rate component.
No, the Cove water has a variable and a flat rate component. The sewer only has a variable component.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to sort of do some analysis of that and come up with, I think, a reasonable model. So even if you used 0 over the billing period, you'd still say have to pay $200 or $250 sewer rates for that period. But as it stands now, that property would pay nothing. So, yeah.
And there's no consideration right now in any of the increases between the difference between a commercial property and a residential property other than variable usage.
Correct. It's picked up through the variable usage. Yeah. 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 I mean, there's businesses in the Cove that use far less water than an average household. So it can't just be based on commercial, I don't think. I think it is fair to shift that component to consumption. Yeah. And thank you for mentioning that last point. I think it's a important discussion point, and
so the increase would be 713 to 889 on the parcel tax plus another $1,000 a year at 200 or 750 annually with the new flat component.
The user rates is very specific to each property and how much consumption they experience over the course of the year. It's really hard to make generalizations about it.
So it's not the 250 plus the variable, it's at least 250, that's a minimum. And
Yes,
if your
that's right.
variable's above that, then you pay.
Yeah, so it's not in addition to the
Okay.
15% change in user rates, it's just a different method of allocating the overall $400,000 needed to be collected. Add a small flat rate component each billing period to each property, and the rest through consumption.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So did anybody have any further comments or do you have any other questions from the financial side?
Your comment about your preference would be to see the flat rate attributed to the sewer system as well. Do you need support for that? Is that something you're seeking? Is it something that is imminent? I mean, is that a change that we can help recommend?
Certainly. Did we have some draft
recommendation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can put it up. It's pretty generic. I'm happy to work on it. One moment, please.
Thank you.
What are you seeing?
Just black right now. Thanks.
Are you seeing it?
So it should be sewer system, not water system.
Yeah.
Pardon?
At the draft, I would just take water system 5-year financial plan out. You can just take water system out because it's not.
Oh, sorry, you're in there. Okay.
Proposed user rates and parcel tax rates.
So do you want to include?
Yeah, and I guess that's my question. Should we have discussion over your comment in regards to the structure of the rates for the sewer system and provide our feedback? Would you be seeking that as well?
Yes, if you're in support of it, I think it's important for council to be aware that you're in support of that plan. If you're not in support of it, I also think it's important for council to be aware of that.
Yeah, and I'm just echoing my support, but I'd like to get some feedback from the rest of the committee as well in that regard. I think it does make a lot of sense, especially if we're identifying the fact that clearly some well, anecdotally, some of the I&I issues we have are potentially could be coming from private property. I mean, if these guys shutter up their house and go to Mexico for 3 months and they still have these problems ongoing, it's still something that we all should be addressing. I guess that would be my first reasoning for it. But I do think it should also mirror the water systems in that regard.
No, I agree. I think it makes sense.
I agree as well. I think there's a benefit whether they are contributing to flows in the sewer system or not. There is still a benefit to have access to that infrastructure.
Even if you're just contributing to the reserve part, right? You're just making your
Correct. Yeah.
property's contribution to the reserve. I think it's.
I also think as a general revenue mechanism, being a resort community with limited means of generating revenue from non-full-time residents, this is a pretty, we need to find more ways of doing that. And this is one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
So is that a new resolution then outside of this general one?
It could
Well,
be
the
unless you have a way of
I think you could just say proposed user rates and structure, or proposed user rates and allocation of user rates or something above.
Allocation of
Utility fees.
Okay, so I started jamming down here with whereases based on your discussions with its own resolution. But if you don't need that level of firepower, we can just put it in the bullet point of the one that was already prepared,
Fine with me.
the top one.
Yep.
Okay. User rates and allocation of utilities fees. Then we don't need these bullets. I don't.
I just want to take a second just to confirm the current parcel tax is 713. So I want to confirm that that would be 892. So if you just give me 1 second, I'll just confirm it.
And Steph, I don't know if you need another recommendation from us, but I think Tim's suggestion that there's a communication element of this also definitely needs to happen.
Okay, so Kristen did suggest it would be included in the notice of intent communications. But if you want more emphasis, we can start something.
Yeah, 713 becomes 892.
Okay, so do you want that included in here, Kristen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
And then, okay, so you haven't mentioned flat rate. Everyone's happy with this. Just allocation. You don't want to say
No,
introduction.
we don't set, yeah, I don't want to say at the moment. I want to do a little bit more analysis first and just get a sense of how that would impact a typical property. I'm thinking it's probably around 250, but I'm just not prepared to commit to that until I do a little bit more work on it. But conceptually and philosophically, if I have the support of the committee, then I'm prepared to go forth and do that.
So just
work.
that this allocation, meaning a flat rate will be introduced, not saying what the
Exactly.
flat rate is.
Correct. Yeah. Thanks.
Kirsten, I guess we've drawn a distinction between homes that are temporarily vacant as opposed to properties that don't have connections.
Yeah,
There's no discussion of a flat rate for everyone in the catchment area.
no, and that's because of the fact that there is no ability for the property to connect to the sewer at this point in time.
Yeah.
So anybody who has paid if it's vacant, but they've paid the fee and been given approval to connect, then absolutely, they would be subject to the parcel tax, even though the house isn't built. But as long as they have that authorization, then the timing of the property being developed is up to them. So
Sure.
the parcel tax would apply.
Thanks.
Okay, who would like to read out the top, recommendation? Is it large enough? Stop doing that. Okay.
Okay, so that the Snug Cove Sewer Local Advisory Committee recommend to council that the draft sewer system 5-year financial plan 2024 to 2028, including proposed user rates and allocation of user fees and proposed parcel tax rates of $8.92, as presented at the March 7, 2024 Snug Cove Sewer Local Advisory Committee meeting, be included as part of the Bowen Island Municipality 2024-2028 5-year plan. And that's a separate one below, Steph?
Yeah.
That the Snug Cove Sewer Local...
No, let's stick with this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just focusing for now. So now we want discussion on that before moving.
I'm happy with that as it stands.
Yeah, we've got the rate of $8.92 for the parcel tax. Do you want to reference what it was? Is that relevant to up from $7.13? Parcel tax rate increase?
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Should we get a motion on that then? Or is there more questions?
You're on mute. This is the time to unmute yourself.
I'm on mute?
No, Cam was.
Oh, Cam was, sorry.
I'm back.
So, Glenn, you're making the motion. I'd be happy to second it.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. Okay. Seconded by Councillor Wake. So are we good? I can call the question. All in favor of adopting this recommendation?
Aye.
Aye.
We are good.
All right.
Okay. Does that feel like enough? Super. Kristen, while you were doing your research, Cooper suggested that we have a resolution regarding the communication piece.
Yep.
Super. Is he still there?
Nope, I'm here.
Want to read that? Are you done editing? I can read that out if you want. That the Snug Cove Sewer Local Advisory Committee recommend that council direct staff to develop a communication piece to accompany the increase in user rates and parcel tax for the Snug Cove Sewer Local Service Area associated with the 2024-2028 5-year financial plan.
Yep.
that works for me. I can.
Yep, that works.
Gonna move her?
So the communication piece is accompanying the user rates and parcel tax notice.
The notice of intent to borrow the funds to do the outfall project.
User rates and parcel.
Okay, so you're right, this is weird. Regarding,
Yep, that's fine.
and then you want to say to accompany the notice of intent.
Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Kristen, it will also appear on the utilities notice like you usually do.
Yeah, we'll use our other social media like email distribution lists and things like that. We'll send it any way we can, but at least this one will be mailed directly to every person. So even people who aren't on social media will be able to access it.
Okay, so we've David's moved it, Cameron seconded it. So I'll call the vote for it. Is all in favor, support? Good to go. Good. Was that it for Kristen then?
I think so from a financial point of view. So the next thing I'll reach out to Hope. We'll talk about
Allison's name on it again.
what the timing is for the notice of intent. So when people can expect to see the documentation land in their mailbox and be notified of the period of response, how long that is, and just a bit of an information piece to people about what to expect from that process. So that's the next thing that we'll be working on in the interim here.
Okay. Thank you. So moving on to number 7 here, if we're ready, Tim, are you going to be taking the place of Councillor Morrison? Is that, are you?
Yeah, Councillor Morse was never going to be doing this.
Okay.
I'm so sorry,
As long
and I
as
would
you're
have worked
prepared
with you, Tim, on this if I hadn't have this is my 3rd council of she was here for a long time. So are you prepared to speak to this?
Well, I'm not sure how this is relevant to the sewer because
Okay.
this is all about the water, but
Drinking water.
I'm happy to speak to it.
I think if it's not relevant, then don't bother. We were just plugging it in where we thought it was really relevant.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it's up to members if they want. Glenn will be hearing it in an hour
That's
and a half.
right.
For Eagle Cliff water.
So if we're going to move past that, then we're on to any new business. If anybody has any new business that they'd like to bring forward. Nothing at this time. Any further questions? Or should we just move to adjourn? I think we've
I'll move to adjourn.
moved to adjourn. Do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Perfect. All in favor for that. Good. Thanks for your extra time today, guys. I know that was a long meeting, but
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Kristen.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.